welcome to 365 Reels. My name is Eric Ortiz. I'm a filmmaker in New York City. My cohort is...
Everett Goldner. I'm a playwright and an actor. Hey there.
Alright, so every week we talk about movies, and this week the movie we want to talk about, a lot actually, is going to be Suicide Squad. Everett, you have passions about this.
I do. Now, normally, our usual formula for these podcasts is we open with a bit of an overview about the film, plot, etc., and then we go into what we like, didn't like. Usually we end up taking contrasting positions and argue a bit back and forth, what worked in the movie, what didn't work, what might have been better, where we disagree. But there's really no need for us to disagree this time because the critics did it all for us. This movie is sitting at, I believe, a 24%. 26%, yeah, 26% on Rotten Tomatoes, exactly balanced with the 74% rating that it has from fans and audience members on Rotten Tomatoes. So while people may think that Batman vs. Superman is the most polarizing movie ever, you can make a case that Suicide Squad is actually the most polarizing movie ever, except that the split this time is not between fans. There are some people out there who didn't love it or didn't like it at all, for sure, but for the most part, people like this movie a lot, and critics really, really didn't. And when you go out there and read any of the reviews, if you have any inclination to, and if you don't, no worries, because we did all that work for you. You'll find that, at least I've found, that their reasoning is very, very superficial. It's sort of a bunch of very general points with not much to back them up. Just filler, all tell and no show, as we'll get to in one of my points. So I've gone through a bunch of reviews before we got started tonight, and I've condensed a tremendous amount of the whining and griping that appears in these reviews out to what the most cogent points that can be made and that could be seen as valid critiques of the movie. And I've got 17 of them with a kind of tag at the end.
Yeah, you've hit as many bits as Sega Genesis, so we can start up from there.
Oh, well said. So,
all right, so let's put this out there. You and I have appreciated each of the DC Cinematic Universe films.
Definitely.
We thought Man of Steel was excellent, very underappreciated.
Very, very underappreciated.
We enjoyed Batman vs. Superman. It's a flawed film. It's
primarily in the ending. If you've seen the extended cut, and if you haven't, it's definitely worth checking out. It fills in a lot of the points that people had a problem with throughout the film, but it doesn't, and can't address the major point, which is that the ending comes out of nowhere, and B, it's simply too much plot for one movie. It needed to be two movies, and the second movie needed to be Doomsday. Because the original Doomsday storyline from the comics is not interesting, I'm sure it was very easy for the studio to simply cut and paste it into the movie. That doesn't make it acceptable, and it doesn't make it a good story. Nonetheless, Snyder, being the very polarizing artist that he is, created a ton of stunning visuals in that movie, even though there isn't always a solid story to back them up. That's not to say that the movie can't be enjoyed. When it first came out, I found myself comparing it to an opera. It's like a Batman versus Superman opera, and who wouldn't want to go see that? And that's really the way I looked at it at the time.
Yeah, and the extended cut, I appreciated a lot more. It was a lot more Superman than I... well, let me rephrase that. There's more Superman in it, so it feels more of a Superman film. You get to see Clark Kent as the reporter. And you understand why Superman would be angry at Batman. So that's fleshed out a lot more.
Yeah, you get a little bit more deeper into the way that each of them sees the other as self-appointed judge. And so each of them, when we get to the fight, does have kind of a valid motivation for being there. That's not to say that the resolution of the fight isn't tremendously silly. Martha. Hey, your moms have the same name. I guess you're my pal now. Okay. It's tremendously silly. Nonetheless, the movie, which I think is, I don't know what its Rotten Tomatoes rating is, it's probably 25 or 20, something like that.
They're low 30s, high 20s.
Yeah, high 20s. And there are fans are deeply divided about on that one. I noticed a random YouTube thread the other day where the comment was simply, Batman v Superman is the most polarizing movie ever.
Until Suicide Squad came out.
And there were 30 comments under it disagreeing, and then the original commenter said, all of the comments on this thread prove my original comment correct. But yes, its case can be made that Suicide Squad is even more polarizing than Batman vs. Superman. It's just a different kind of polarizing, and a clearer polarizing. So I guess that's evolution, because rather than arguing with each other, we can all just argue with the critics, who aren't going to argue back with us because they've all had their say, and that's the end of it.
No. In terms of the reviews that we've read, the one for me that stood out as to say that that Warner Brothers and DC are on the right path was the one of Kevin Smith's.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen that one, so you'll have to talk about it.
in its most basic form, Smith is basically saying that he dug the movie, that they nailed the Harley Quinn Joker relationship, that these this dirty dozen of superhero-ish villains, it worked. Like the energy's there, the characterizations are there, the powers are there. All these elements exist in a real world setting, and it worked for him. And this has been a comic book guy for 20 plus years. You can't argue with him in terms of having street cred when it comes to the comic book genre.
Yeah, you've said, Eric, a number of times tonight before we got started, and in the past few days, that the movie has tremendous cinematic energy. I would agree with you, and I know that my friends who have seen the movie would probably agree with you, but that's your major point, and you've also talked about how the movie is in some ways like an 80s movie, so why don't you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's to me felt like well, to give a little context to it, there's been a lot of hoopla about Jared Leto being disappointed at his role as the Joker being cut down, and how he doesn't feel like he's really a character within the structure or the arc of the film. He's more like this being that's out there that causes a little mayhem here and there. He's an unknown factor, and for this story, it works. The Joker cannot be one of the main characters in this film. This movie's not about the Joker; it's about the Suicide Squad. And while I would have liked to see more of it, it didn't take away from the experience I was having enjoying the film.
Funnily enough, that actually leads into one of the major points from the reviews.
He's got 16 of them.
No, it's actually number 18, because I forgot to write that one down because it's so random, but it's kind of the basis underpinning, probably at least half of the reviews, which is that we don't like this movie because it's an ensemble movie. We think that you should have focused on one or two characters. We wanted to see a different movie. In other words, we didn't want to see the movie that we've known we were going to get for a year from the trailers that we've had leading up to this point and the buzz, etc., like you have with any major studio release. And like we were saying earlier, it's, you don't go to see Driving Miss Daisy and expect Bruce Willis hanging out of a chopper in a wife-beater shirt throwing grenades around. You don't go to see an X-Men movie and expect tea and crumpets and
you don't go to see a Michael Bay film and then you see Judi Dench and Anthony Hopkins having tea.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. But in terms of, let me finish off my 180s point with this film, is that the films of the 80s, they kept things simple. They gave you a sense of what the story was.
Yeah.
And if they were having issues with length, when they were hitting that 2-hour mark, what they would do is that they would omit a subplot. And the subplot that got omitted from this film, rightfully so, was all the extra Joker stuff, which I'm sure we'll get in an extended cut. We live in an era where there's a director's cut, the extended cut, the deleted scenes you'll get on YouTube.
Yeah,
but
if you really want to see all that stuff,
it's going to come out
later, so don't worry about it.
But in the 2-hour window of this movie, and it's a good thing this movie was 2 hours, because it goes by so fast and so intensely that you're overwhelmed by just how much information, how many characters, how many settings,
I think it's actually a little under 2 hours.
No, it's about 2 hours and 10 after. After the credits, yeah.
Oh, okay, after credits, sure.
They cut out the Joker. It didn't bother me. The scenes of the Joker in the film are awesome.
No, and it does leave you with just enough intrigue about, we know everyone, you can't, unless you live under a rock, you know who the Joker is. You don't need an introduction to the character any more than we needed another Batman origin story after 25 years of Batman movies, and so we didn't get one in Batman vs Superman. There's no need for it.
One thing this movie does that's very clever is that it merges Harley's origin story with the Joker's origin story. His origin story is not him becoming the Joker. His origin story is him becoming the Joker as Harley's other half.
Yeah.
And it's nailed beautifully in this film.
It is.
It's a very macabre beauty, but still nailed it.
And that does lead into one of my 16 points, so we may as well start with that one.
Yeah, let's start with number one, because I don't want you to bounce all over the place. What's point number one?
Point number one on my list is that the critics believe there are too many pop culture songs in this movie.
These are the same buffoons, I'll put it out there because they have to, that loved all the pop culture references in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you can't...
Where the dude literally has a mixtape that we see him playing, and it's called My Awesome Mixtape. So if you believe that mixtape is awesome, then you've got no reason to find fault with this one, except that it's DC, and as Eric has said, because it's DC, we don't have a Marvel logo at the top of the movie, which is really why they don't like the movie.
Right, but it's a mute point's not the right word. It's a silly point to have because every film that's popular nowadays, the Fast and Furious movies have pop culture references and modern songs.
Sure.
So
Suicide Squad has, in all fairness, a few more songs than most movies do. I mean, there's a lot of music. It makes for a great compilation soundtrack if you want to pick up the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, there's a bunch of songs on it that most of them you've heard at some point in your life. They're kind of background music to your life, like they are for everyone. That's the 60 songs. You've got Seven Nation Army there. I think you've got have you got Sympathy for the Devil in there? I think
Sympathy for the Devil was not in the soundtrack, but there's a cover to Bohemian Rhapsody.
That's right. Well, that's in there, and that was in the trailers too.
Yeah.
So and just as with the quick flash of intros and background that we get on each character, the songs serve much the same purpose. They segue us from scene to scene, in a logical and straightforward enough narrative sense to make the movie keep gelling and moving forward, and fill in some gaps that might otherwise come off as dead spots if they weren't there, because after all, this is only one movie and there's like 9 different characters in it who matter.
And this is another one thing that I enjoyed about the soundtrack and how it was used in the film. Very few movies get this right. The first movie to actually get it right, nail it completely, was the original Crow back in 1994, and then what didn't happen again until a few years later with the first Matrix film, where soundtrack and score just mesh into each other.
Yeah.
And it fits the movie.
That's true.
I think IGN had one of their reviewers was complaining about how the music comes in and it's inappropriate and so forth and so forth, and it's like no. The music that's in the film is to serve what's happening on screen. It might be hitting you over the head like a sledgehammer, but it's still there and it still works. I don't understand why you would complain about there being one song to show off Harley putting on her outfit, or the montage of Deadshot hitting the bullseye over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's just cool stuff. I don't see why that would be a problem with most people.
Each song serves a narrative purpose or a character-wise purpose. It's an interesting point about The Crow. I haven't the slightest idea how The Crow was received back in 1994.
Mixed.
Mixed. I'm sure it was very mixed. Of course, it was a comic book movie at a time when there were no comic book movies, and an art stylized one at that. But now you would be hard pressed to find anybody who considers that movie anything but a classic. I mean, the last time I saw it was a couple of years ago, and I was amazed at how well it's held up. I mean, it doesn't look modern per se. You can see that it's a 90s movie, but that doesn't, it's not dated just because it's a 90s. It's just from a different era, in the same way that Last Tango in Paris, to choose a completely different kind of example, is from a different era, but it's still a great story and very immersing.
Yeah, and it's timeless in the same way that something like a Blade Runner's timeless, where it hasn't aged, but the texture of the time is there.
Yeah.
And you can see it with fresh eyes, with compared to a modern day movie, and not this movie was made in 1980 XYZ or
right. In the same way that
XYZ.
any successful art is a product of its time. Picasso is a product of its time. You don't go look at Guernica and say, oh well, this is nonsense because he doesn't have Bush's military-industrial complex and Donald Trump in there.
Okay, now you're just showing off. Okay. Point number 2.
Point number 2. No individual character arcs save for Deadshots.
Okay. We don't like cussing on this podcast. Let's just say that that's grossly inaccurate, especially when the movie is a montage piece. I will reference Guardians of the Galaxy again, where you had nothing of a story arc with any of those characters except for Peter Quill. Yes, you get Deadshot. Yes, you get Harley. You don't need anybody else but that, because if you have another character arc that's, I don't use the word complete, but that's shoehorned in there, then it would be too many character arcs, and that'd be something else to complain about. So you can't have it both ways.
Well, to be fair, let's go through a couple of the characters and try to imagine how a backstory would work for, say, Killer Croc. Now, what did Killer Croc do before he went into prison? Well, he ate people. Do we really need to see 15 or 20 minutes, or for that matter, an entire solo movie, which is what a lot of the critics wanted, of Killer Croc eating people? How many people would he need to eat? Would he need to fight a larger version of Killer Croc at the end, like they do in Marvel movies, or would he need to do something else? I think you get the point. We don't really need a Killer Croc backstory. We do get some backstory on El Diablo. We don't get it at the beginning. We get it near the end of the movie, which is unconventional. Hey, is that all right if we have some creativity in there? We don't put the backstory in the place you expect to get it?
Well, then when it comes into the film, his backstory and explaining who he is as a character, it's when you want to find out more about him.
Yeah.
Why is this guy here? What made this guy turn? Because El Diablo is the fire guy. He's their fire starter, if you want to put it that way. But he's very much a passive character. You don't understand why he's in prison in the first place. He looks weird and he has powers.
All you know is that he's taken a vow not to kill anymore, but you don't really know why.
Right, and the reveal as to why he's taken that vow is shown later in the film, right before the third act really begins.
Yeah.
It fits well exactly where it is. You put that at the front of the film, and all you're just waiting for is, well, okay, when's this guy gonna finally just let it all out?
When's he gonna snap? But because we get it near the end, is it a tremendously original story? No, we don't need to tell you what it is. You can probably work out more or less what it is before you see the movie. But it's saved by fantastic acting, method acting, which we'll get to later, from the guy who plays El Diablo. I have no idea who the actor is.
He's a Hispanic character actor, Jay Hernandez. He's been around for a while. But most of you guys would know him probably as playing young Carlito Brigante in the prequel to Carlito's Way, Carlito Rise to Power. Okay movie. But yeah, he's been in a lot of things here and there. But his character of El Diablo is one of the few members of Suicide Squad that actually has superpowers. And it is kind of neat how arguably he's the strongest, and he's also the most reserved. So they spend most of the movie trying to get him to come out of his shell, so to speak.
Yeah,
so
like you do in any conventional yet solid character arc. There's a lot of tension between is this guy going to finally go off and use his powers in a way that no one else can to torch a bunch of baddies, where if he doesn't, they'll have to spend all of their time hacking and slashing through them, and maybe a few of them will die in the process, whereas this dude can basically just splay his hands and take them all out in one burst. But he won't do it for a while. It's not a spoiler to tell you that he eventually uses his powers. It's a superhero movie.
Right, but yeah, so El Diablo and Captain Boomerang, who I didn't even know was a real freaking.
They're all real superheroes. I mean, they've all had comic books written about them. Everyone has. Captain Boomerang has powers per se. He's got boomerangs. It's not rocket science. They come back to him.
He's like Hawkeye, only that it's not straight; it's curved.
Yeah. Well, yeah, wow. Great analogy there. Oh, I like that one. It's like a Marvel movie, except more interesting, dare we say.
One character that I actually liked a lot and I want to see more of is Katana. Yeah. There's a history. This is one of the complaints that I've heard here and there where, you just have her there, and I think you mentioned that someone referred to it as a glorified cosplay character.
She looks like a cosplay character, and yes, she does, to which I say, so what? What's the problem with that? She looks like a really interesting cosplay character.
And she reminded me a lot of the character Switch in the first Matrix film. Switch is the...
I don't remember her.
She's the woman in white. Mm-hmm. Like, everyone's dressed in black, she's in white. But you get a sense of there's so much history trapped in her that you want to find out more about it later. And you get a little appetizer as to where this character can go. Yeah. And for a movie that has an ensemble of, 7 or 8 leads, you get enough of that and then you move on.
Yeah, in Katana's case, more than anyone else's, because we don't specifically get... we do get one scene, a very quick conversation about her husband's dead, this is why, he's trapped, this is why. But mostly what you get through the strength of the actress's performance, and again, I don't know who it is playing Katana. As with all of them, and because there was a method element to how this movie was made, David Ayer had his actors, his whole cast do a lot of very methody, Strasberg-y things, and we'll get to that later. That's one of the points.
Yeah, David Ayer wrote and directed the film. I mean, you'd probably know him best as the guy that wrote Training Day.
Training Day, that's probably what almost everyone has seen of his movies. His other directorial pieces I haven't seen myself, but everyone knows Training Day.
Yeah, and then Will Smith is Deadshot. I mean, he of the arcs, he probably gets the most complete arc. I think is because among the members of Suicide Squad, he's the most normal person, so he's the one that's most easily relatable. And
he's the most normal person of them because because he's played by Will Smith, and because B, his power is the most straightforward. He's just a superb marksman. That's it. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to think about it. We know what guns and bullets are. We know how it works. That's it.
Yeah. So a quick breakdown of how things are, and quite frankly, like we can go on and on about all the other characters. Like the two that I want to end with are Amanda Waller and Captain Flag. Enchantress, I'm pretty sure we'll get to, but Amanda Waller is basically the most badass character that I've ever seen on screen. Like, she is totally...
Yeah, credit to Viola Davis, as always.
She's an
acting machine.
She's fantastic in it. And Joe Edgerton? No,
Joel Edgerton, yeah.
Joel Edgerton, yeah. He, Captain Flag, he was okay. I think the one thing that I've seen in prior to this was the remake of RoboCop, where I thought he did a very respectable job. But in this movie, he kind of... To me, it felt like he was playing Murphy before he got blown up. But
yeah,
I didn't mind him at all. I didn't think he did an amazing work per se, but again, it's just another...
No, he was serviceable. I mean, his scenes near the end of the film, after he's bonded with the squad to some degree, I did find affecting in the bar and at the end of the film, without spoiling anything, when he's dealing with the aftermath of Deadshot's character arc. There were some he's got some very nuanced moments there, Edgerton does. And, you know, in another movie, a lesser movie, frankly, he would probably be the star. But here he's overshadowed by, like, 6 different powerhouses, so...
Yeah, and Jared Leto's Joker, awesome.
Yeah, again, we'll get to it. Let's move on to the next point.
Yeah, point number 3.
Point on the list, which is that we didn't get solo films for each member of the squad beforehand, and so it sucks, because that's the way Marvel did it. Now... When you have a movie called Suicide Squad, I feel that you go into the theater with certain expectations, and one of those expectations is going to be that things are going to come at you in kind of a blitzkrieg manner. Hence the name of the film, you see, Suicide Squad. The movie is not called...
the Harley and Joker relationship.
It's not called the Harley and Joker relationship. It isn't called taking a leisurely stroll around the beach at sunset and then getting into... a stretch limo and driving slowly away.
Yeah, and it's not called Deadshot's Redemption.
It's called Suicide Squad. It's about all of them.
It's an ensemble piece.
It's an ensemble piece. You've known this for a year. Now, if your argument is that we need to know more about these characters before we get started with them here in their ensemble piece, I will say it again. How much development do you really need for a man who looks like a crocodile and eats people? I don't think we need an entire solo film about him. We get who Captain Boomerang is and what he does. He's your mate. He's an Aussie bloke. One of the method things that Ayer had this guy do was on a Skype call he had Jai Courtney put out cigarette butts on his arms, things like that.
Ouch.
Yeah, ouch. These characters are drawn in broad strokes. Could you fill in a lot of detail? Sure. Could you have a back movie about each of them if you really wanted to? Sure. The world is a big place. Possibilities are infinite. You could potentially have a movie about each one of these characters.
But you can say that about the other cinematic universe where you have these characters like, let's say, what's the good one? Black Widow. Like, there's plenty of backstory there. How many have we gotten? We've gotten 0 movies on that character.
We haven't had a Black Widow movie
yet. She's been the best thing in 3 out of the 4 films.
But then that means that all of it sucks. It all crumbles to dust because we don't know what Black Widow's origin is, even though we actually do, because we see it all in Age of Ultron, and then she explains it later. And so we understand who the character is.
Yeah, we don't get a backstory for Black Panther in Civil War, but the character's in there, does this thing, he's cool. We don't get realistically do not get a backstory for characters like Rhodey or even not Vision. What was I talking about? Scarlet Witch. Mm-hmm. There's no backstory there. It's just basically these characters exist, and you have this footnote of information. You go, okay, that's where they came from. Move on.
Yeah, they were created. Here they are. Superhero movies generally need to be about broad strokes. It's hard to make. It's really hard to make a superhero movie that's a character drama. They tried to do it in in the Origins movies, which you've seen and I haven't seen, Origins Wolverine, The Wolverine, those movies, and
Yeah.
those movies were very. The Wolverine was seen as a very good popcorn movie, but those are one-offs that the studio had time to do after they had told the major stories that needed to be told.
Right.
And because Suicide Squad is such an essentially one-off and unique piece of work itself, we don't know if any of these characters, after all, are ever going to show up again. Leto's Joker will show up again.
Yeah,
Harley will probably show up again. Will any of the others show up again? Maybe not.
But there's whispers of Deadshot being in the standalone Batman film because there's a history between those characters.
Yeah,
There's
sure.
50 years of history in Deadshot that we don't know of. So there's plenty. There's
With
plenty in that
all of
well.
them. I mean, in the comics, there's a point where Deadshot actually takes up the Batman cowl when Bruce Wayne is incapacitated at some point.
So yeah. So there's a reason why they put Deadshot in there. Okay, let's go to point.
Number 8. This movie sucks because Will Smith plays Will Smith.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I have to ask you who it is that you want Will Smith to play. The man trades on his charisma. He trades on it. He is one of the last legitimate movie stars that we have because he trades on it very effectively. The one movie that he ever did where he was not allowed to trade on it was After Earth, which failed. I read what must have been 85 burn reviews of that movie, and by that point, I didn't really need to see the movie at that point. I was good.
I got to see that movie.
Yeah,
on the so bad it has to be. It's got to be bad-tacular.
Yeah. But Shyamalan, before the film's release, actually bragged to the media about how he didn't allow Will Smith to use his usual charm. And one of the reviews very cogently made the point, if you're going to leave that empty, you might have wanted to give him something else to use, but you didn't give him any other tools to use.
Yeah, you basically shut him down. It would be like hiring Jack Nicholson in your film in the early 80s and just tell him, okay, just sit there and don't do anything with your eyebrows.
Yeah.
Or don't give me the smirk, don't give me anything like that. Just stay there and be an empty canvas. You're not going to get an actor of that...
Unless you're hiring Daniel Day-Lewis to be in a superhero movie, which I would love to see, but I doubt it's going to happen anytime soon, you're going to get someone who comes to the table with a few qualities developed already, even with people who are perfectly cast. Robert Downey Jr., Samuel L. Jackson. It's interesting because Robert Downey... people don't really quite realize, but Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony Stark has influenced the comics more than the other way around. Yeah. Prior to him showing up as Iron Man back in 2008... Tony Stark was not really that guy. He was more broody. He was more Batman-like. Yeah. Now he's, in the comics, portrayed as more snarky because that's what people have seen and that's what they're used to. Samuel L. Jackson, for all that he's a great Nick Fury, he doesn't so much resemble the Nick Fury in the comic books.
No,
I think a different style.
Yeah, well, let's put it out there. The comic book Nick Fury is a white guy.
Aside from that, yeah, I mean, that's totally aside from that.
But that attitude, that fierce, I'm in charge demeanor that Samuel Jackson brings to characters in other films, he brings to Nick Fury, and it fits. Mm-hmm. So you don't question it. And
do you buy Will Smith? The simplest question you could ask to prove this thesis true or false, that the movie sucks because Will Smith plays Will Smith, is, do you buy Will Smith as a hitman? Well, some critics are saying they can't buy Will Smith as a hitman. Did you buy Will Smith as a hitman in this movie?
I bought Will Smith as a hitman in this movie.
There's the scene where, and we're going to give you some mild spoilers, but hey, at this point you may as well just pause the podcast and go watch the movie and come back if you haven't.
Yeah, we're about to the length of the movie at the rate that we're going.
Where halfway through the movie, Harley Quinn escapes, and Amanda Waller tells Deadshot to shoot her down while she's escaping with the Joker. And Deadshot tells her that girl's not done jack to me, because by then we've seen a really clear and quite powerful and well portrayed dynamic friendship, like kind of a professional friendship, come to the front between Harley and Deadshot.
Yeah, it's like a silent appreciation for each other that grows throughout the film.
Yeah, they have what I felt like was a really professional respect for each other the whole time, and so he tells Amanda, that girl's done nothing to me. I won't kill her. And there's a few scenes earlier, I think it's before that, where maybe it was in the bar, where Deadshot lays out his code. I don't do women. I don't kill children. He has his ethics like anyone is allowed to have. Yeah, would it stand up to scrutiny if we were going to have a solo film about a hitman? Maybe not, but we don't, because again, this is an ensemble movie. I think that covers that well enough. Do you want to add anything to that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Will Smith turned down Independence Day to do this movie for many reasons, but one in
The first
particular
one
that
being that he knew Independence Day was going to be the firebomb that it was.
yeah, that movie was incredibly bad. Second of all, is that this is something interesting and fresh. He's never played a bad guy before, let alone a badass bad guy. This is a stretch of yeah, it's still Will Smith, but this is not the same Will Smith that you saw in Bad Boys. It's not the same Will Smith that you saw in the original Independence Day.
Yeah.
It's not the same Will Smith that you saw, 6 Degrees of Separation. This is him going darker.
Yeah, he just did that movie that I haven't seen and I really want to where he plays a doctor investigating NFL injuries. Concussion.
Yeah, Concussion.
I really want to see that.
It's not a great film, but his performance is it's really believable.
Yeah, it's because Will Smith is this dude who pulls down $25 million per film or whatever. It's easy to write him off as it's just another Will Smith, but he's an artist like everyone else, and if he didn't continue to grow, then he wouldn't be pulling down 25 mil per pick.
Yeah, and there's something within the Deadshot character that you can explore as an actor, and you get that, and you will probably get a lot more of it. And
you get it in large ways, you get it in small ways. Sometimes you get it without any dialogue at all. When Deadshot and Harley share a look, or when Deadshot and Flag share a look. There's a moment where it begins in the trailers where Deadshot says we're going to the swirling ring of garbage in the sky, and then in the movie he tells Flag, because of course we would. What else are you going to have us do? And Flag walks away, and Deadshot says, "Man, where does this end?" And in that moment, it's a little moment, but you get a very nice existential blast of Deadshot's frustration and resignation to the situation. Yeah, he's a bad guy, but he's not a bad human being.
Yeah.
None of them are, not even Harley. Harley's psychotic, but she's not a bad person. Killer Croc is a cannibal, but he's still capable of being on a team. El Diablo's character arc is the most profound there in terms of a bad guy trying to go good.
Well, I think I remember Smith talking about how when Air was prepping the actors for it, the movie was really about the difference between doing something bad and doing something evil. These guys are bad, but none of them is necessarily evil. Mm-hmm. So, and by the way, you don't hire Will Smith and not expecting to be Will Smith, because Will Smith has had a very long and prosperous career.
He's going to give you his Will Smith charm that we've been seeing since Fresh Prince. If you don't want that, don't go see a Will Smith movie. It's not that hard.
All right, next.
Next points. Suicide Squad sucks because it all tells rather than shows, i.e. there are several points in the movie where Deadshot says something to the effect of, where the bad guys, don't forget, they're going to blame this on us because we're the bad guys, we're the patsies, etc. These moments were all over the trailers, and so they were, easy meat for the critics to jump on, and so they did. I think you had a pretty good rebuttal for this one before we started, and now I don't recall what it was off the top of my head. Do you want to go with that?
They're not bad guys, they're heels.
Yeah.
None of these guys are main villains. They're side villains, which means they're always under the control of some other bigger boss. So, yeah, you can say that Deadshot probably took some people out for the Penguin at one point. I don't know this for sure because I don't normally read the graphic novels. Yeah, Harley might have killed a person here and there for the Joker, but ultimately they were either trying to please someone or they were working for someone. They are heels. They're not like as Eris pointed out.
It really doesn't matter what happened in the comics. There have been 50 years of backstory of comics on each of these characters, and although I haven't read them, I have no doubt that there are comics where Harley Quinn is absolutely psychotic.
Actually, Harley's only been around since the animated series in the early 90s.
Okay, sorry, 25 years of comics. That's all. I'm certain that there are comics where Deadshot has been portrayed as an absolutely soulless villain. I'm sure that there are comics. I'm sure that Killer Croc is usually not portrayed as anything much beyond a really scary figure in the backgrounds.
Correct.
But at the same time, that doesn't matter. It's the filmmaker's license to pick and choose how to portray these characters, and they chose to portray them in a more sympathetic light. If they didn't, you wouldn't really have a movie because you wouldn't have any dramatic tension.
We wouldn't want to be in the same room with them. You have to give them something that resembles humanity for you to stay there for the 2 hours that you're going to stay there.
Right.
So, pardon the expression, but suck it. This is the movie that you've got. These are the characters that you have. You would not for a moment would have believed the Joker as part of the Suicide Squad and him trying to do anything that remotely looks as good. Same thing with the Penguin. Same thing with a character like the Riddler, or
No,
maybe
you
a
can't
Mr.
put-
Freeze or
You can't
a
put
Two-Face.
Batman's main antagonist on the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Maybe Two Face, possibly, because he's crazy enough that you could justify it and you can get away with it.
Right.
You can put Joker in the movie, but you can't put him on the squad. You can't put Penguin on the squad. You can't put the Red Hood on the squad, or Bruce's father in the comic where he comes back. I think he's called Dr. Glove or something like that. I don't remember.
Right, but
There are people who hate Batman, and then there are people who are just out there trying to make their way, and care about things other than defeating the Dark Knight. Deadshot's trying to make a living, cares about his daughter. Harley is madly in love with the Joker. Killer Croc wants a new TV. Captain Boomerang likes pink unicorns. Do we need to? Do we need? I ask you, friends, do we need a solo movie that explains in 2 hours for great detail how Captain Boomerang developed his fetish for pink unicorns? I ask you.
Yeah, well, he's probably part of the Brony documentary. All right, so what is our next point? Point
Moving
number
on,
10.
Point number 10. Suicide Squad sucks because the pacing is illogical. This is a phrase that I caught in one of the reviews. This kind of blows my mind. I mean, all I have to do is, as someone who is... Eric is the tech guy among the two of us. He's a filmmaker. I'm not on the tech side of filmmaking. I'm an actor and a writer. And all I have to do is watch the movie and see, well, the story makes enough sense to me. I don't know what you consider illogical about the pacing. All I thought about the pacing was that it was tremendously fun. But since you have more of a tech insight into this, so why don't you talk about the quote-unquote illogical pacing?
Well, there's a moment in the film where the main villain's henchman is wreaking havoc on the city, and it's a scene taking place at night. As this is happening, it cuts back to this little montage of the squad getting their gear together, and that's taking place during dusk. It could even be like middle of the afternoon because it's a very bright looking scene. So there's almost an illogical jump in terms of storytelling there. At the same time, they do have this swirling black cloud over the city when the attacks are happening, so you can make the argument that, well, when this is happening, that big cloud is covering the sun, so everything looks like night. But be that as it may, as the movie's happening, it doesn't matter because the pace of the movie is not interrupted. Kevin Reynolds, the guy that did Robin Hood and Waterworld. What's his name?
Oh, yeah, I've forgotten that dude's name offhand.
But
The director of Prince of Thieves and Waterworld.
Yeah.
Well, Rick Costner directed Waterworlds.
I had to finish directing it because Reynolds quit.
That's right.
Well, in any case, many directors have said that when it comes to story and character and pacing, when the movie has a pace and you feel it move and it's telling you what it wants to be, you go on the side of pacing.
Yeah, you go along with the story that the movie is trying to tell you, or you resist it because you have some biased reasons for wanting to hate this movie on sight. Which
Peter Hunt, who cut the first 10 James Bond films, talked about how you have to fight with the film to get it to be what you want it to be, and then sometimes the film tells you what it wants to be. Ayer didn't cut this movie himself. This movie was farmed out to an editing house, which is another bone of contention that people have.
It's the same editing house that did one of the trailers. Ergo, DC is just trying to milk this for cash.
Well, and Ayer he's an artist. He's told his story. He's got his footage. He's got what he wants there. And he's never cut a movie like this before. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing wrong in saying that I have an idea of what I want on screen, but I myself cannot do that. I need someone else to take over.
It is not essentially any different than what happens in almost no movies are edited by the same person who directs them.
No,
the director
Martin Scorsese has never cut any of his films. He shoots the movie.
Neither has Tarantino.
He hands it over to someone, and then when he comes back, oh, that's cool. Well, let's change X, Y, Z, and that's it. That's how the process goes. Mm-hmm.
The only auteurs I can think of offhand that edit their own movies are the Coen brothers. But that's the Coen under the pseudonym Robert James, yeah.
And James Cameron, but that's because James Cameron, every movie that he does is a movie that he gets much control over that he has to.
Because of the tech side of every single Cameron movie, you can't have someone else edit it.
Yeah, he knows how many frames here, how many frames there. The guy's genius. But we're not talking about James Cameron. Ultimately, what it boils down to is that these illogical jumps in pacing are not because the movie is flawed or because they messed up in terms of their storytelling. Is because the movie has a certain energy to it. Again, the cinematic energy is intense. Yeah. You do not want the movie to stop. even if it doesn't make any sense, even if this doesn't happen in the film, but let's say someone's wearing a purple jacket in one shot and then they turn the corner and the jacket is turquoise. It doesn't matter as long as that pace is going, as long as you're getting that feeling of this is something big.
As long as the pace continues and you feel like there's a consistency, then you accept, hey, maybe the dude put on a turquoise jacket in the interim. Maybe he ducked around the corner and did that. Do we need to know why? Not really. If you feel that the pacing is off, then you begin to say, hey, that guy's wearing a different jacket. That feels wrong. And now I feel like I'm out of the movie. There was no point in Suicide Squad where I felt taken out of the movie. And it's kind of an offshoot of this point. That can be seen as a valid critique, which is that when you have a situation like this where something is blotting out the sun, at that point, the real heroes, Batman, Wonder Woman, etc., would probably step in at that point in the actual universe and take care of it. But the rebuttal to that is it's the same reason we don't have the Incredible Hulk in Civil War, because he upsets the balance of power too much. That's not the story we're telling.
Then this is just my 2 cents on it. I believe this movie's happening at the same time Justice League is happening, because Batman is not there, Superman is still passed, so there is no real superhero.
It's before Justice Squad. I mean, we have the
Justice League.
Justice League. Excuse me. It happens before Justice League. We know that because of the stinger at the end between Ben Affleck's Batman and Amanda Waller. Which sets up
the Justice League, the Batman search for the metahumans.
Yeah.
So that there is no Superman
there's no
right
Superman,
now.
right?
So yeah.
So that's out. Could you have Wonder Woman step in and take care of it? Yeah, maybe, but we also know that this Wonder Woman generally does not get involved in the affairs of mankind, and there's certainly no reason to think that she would step into this situation when she hasn't stepped into anything since World War One. Would Batman come in? No! Batman already got these guys in jail. His perspective at this point is going to be, it's not my problem. I know Waller's doing something, and I know that if I step in, she's going to cause trouble for me. It's in my boast. It's wise for Batman to stay out of it at that point. Yeah. Could the Flash step in? He could.
What's he gonna do? Spin
What's he gonna do?
The other directions of the things. You don't need the superheroes you don't need your official superheroes to step in, and these logical jumps in pacing in editing are. You can nitpick it. I think it's a stupid thing to get all caught up on. So I'd say if
because I just explained it.
Yeah, and then honestly, if you knew editing so well, you'd be making movies, not critiquing it. Next point.
Not whining. Okay, point 11, and this is maybe the umbrella under which all of the rain falls. Suicide Squad sucks because it's not any fun. It's not any fun because I, the critic, say that it's not any fun.
No, it's not any fun because we're expecting more Guardians and less DC Cinematic Universe.
More Guardians of the Galaxy. That is the comparison I was seeing a lot, which was strange to me because while, sure, the soundtrack, but Guardians of the Galaxy is not a movie I thought of even once while I was watching Suicide Squad. Because again, while Guardians of the Galaxy is... It's
a great movie.
It's a great movie. It is probably, of all the Marvel entries, it's probably the most unique of the Marvel entries. I mean, it takes place in a different space than the rest of the Marvel movies.
There's no superheroes per se.
No, everyone's just someone who's good with guns, or someone who's an assassin, or a talking squirrel that's good with guns, or whatever. But there's there's no conventional superheroes, as there aren't here, and yet Guardians of the Galaxy is really so driven by quips. It's driven a tremendous amount by the humor of the film, which works really well. But Suicide Squad is not driven by humor. There's humor in it, for sure, but it's just one element and of a number of things that are happening.
Yeah, it's a very... I thought it was an upbeat... Suicide Squad's an upbeat movie. I go back to this what I've been saying before. Cinematic energy.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch. It's fun to see what's happening.
Watch, yeah.
It's beautifully shot. The color palette surprised the heck out of me.
Yeah, we'll get later to it's one of the points in the list later. Essentially Harley's origin story, her birth scene.
Oh yeah.
When she
save it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get there, but that's a gorgeous shot. There's a tremendous amount of just kinetic, colorful beauty to look at in this movie. Even very simple shots like Captain Boomerang in an alley after the first fight ends, frantically looking for his pink unicorn and stuffing it back under his jacket. I mean, just in that moment, it's a simple moment, but it's a very nicely composed shot. The pink of the unicorn against the drabness of Captain Boomerang as he shoves it under, and you can see that the unicorn is not dirty. He takes care of it.
Yeah, it looks so pretty.
Yeah, it's very pretty.
So, bottom line, the movie's fun. If you don't think it's fun, it's because I don't like cussing. Next point.
We'll leave it there. Point 12. Suicide Squad sucks because I, the critic, think it's exactly like a video game. Okay, leaving aside, because unless you're Roger Ebert, who actually did argue at length in a notorious essay that video games are not arts.
He was wrong.
He was wrong, and he was using very, very one-dimensional, silly video games to try to make his point.
Outdated and archaic points to make his point.
Yeah, he had never heard of Skyrim. He had never heard of Mass Effect or Knights of the Old Republic. He had never heard of anything with
or an indie game like there was a very simple game, Limbo, which is basically a kid trapped in purgatory, which is an amazing piece of storytelling, all non-vocal.
Or one of my favorite, probably hands down my favorite video game of all time. It's for the original Xbox, and it's called Jade Empire. It's a martial arts RPG. Just everything from the voice acting to the layering of the story. This is not a review of video games or of Jade Empire, but I could talk about the game for hours.
So bottom line, let's say, for argument's sake, it is.
Let's say it's exactly like a video game. Fantastic.
Yeah, because believe it or not, there are many games that are actually written better than most films.
It's true.
And if you don't believe us, then you've looked at the latest Star Trek film, Star Trek Beyond. It is basically an episode from the video game Mass Effect.
Yeah.
So,
dare we say, you could look at The Force Awakens, in which the story is somewhat lacking in a number of respects.
Yeah, so
which was not based on a video game.
Oh yeah, because there was a great Star Wars game called by the same guy that made Mass Effect, Knights of the Old Republic, which has an amazing story.
And it has a twist about 3/4 of the way through the game, which I won't spoil, but which is exactly on par with Luke, I Am Your Father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to top it off, let's go really popular. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, Modern Warfare, one of those two. I think it was Modern Warfare 2. Was written by Paul Haggis.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
Yeah,
really.
It was a I think a 20-30 page treatment that he gave the studio, and that's the video game that you're playing by Academy Award winning screenwriter Paul Haggis.
So there you go.
So it doesn't matter if it's based or feels like a video game. Video games have great stories.
Video games are just another medium. Every medium is a valid medium for art and for storytelling. It's in that 2009 essay, Ebert's point was essentially that video games are somehow intrinsically lesser, and the most cogent response that I saw to that was, look, if you have all of these elements in the background for a video game, art direction, writing, cinematography, motion capture, voice acting, if you have all of these different elements that make up art, then how can you say that the sum of all of those elements is somehow not art?
Yeah, maybe because it just doesn't know math.
Maybe.
So it doesn't matter if it feels like a video game because video games are cool.
Moving on. Next point 13 on why Suicide Squad sucks. Now we're going to talk about two specific scenes. The first scene is the scene where Joker is sitting in the middle of a circle made of knives arranged in a circle. Critics, for some reason, found this circle random. Who put those knives there? Why are they there? Why would Joker be sitting in the middle of a circle of knives?
He's insane.
And
it looks really freaking cool when you get that over the head shot.
Yeah, it really does. And there's no particular reason why Joker could not have set down each of those knives in exactly that place. It's when they come and tell him that the government has taken Harley Quinn out of prison and they're not sure where they are, where she is right now, but they're looking for him. And when Joker knows this, it makes perfect sense that he would be obsessing about Harley, and he might well sit down and decide to arrange knives in a circle and sit in the middle of the circle. It makes sense to me.
And in the realization that is a comic book film, again, that overhead shot of him laying in that circle of knives, and you actually, if you were to pause that frame and look around and see the little details that are there, that is a comic book frame. That is when you turn the page and it's a fold over.
Yeah, no, that's a shot that you could blow up and put on your wall.
Yeah, that's a gorgeous shot, and it's a great Joker moment. You get the Joker laugh. You get a taste of his obsession with Harley. He trapped himself in this room. Very similar to how Scarface trapped himself in his fortress. with a mountain of cocaine.
Oh wow, that's great. I hadn't even thought of that one.
You know, we'll talk about Jared Leto's Joker in a bit.
But yeah, the Scarface analogy is I really like that. This is in many ways the Scarface Joker. People are saying that Jared Leto's Joker is essentially just an amalgam of everything that's come before, of the Nicholson Joker, of the Mark Hamill Joker, and of the Ledger Joker. I didn't really see that. Given that I saw
there are echoes of it there.
Bits of it here
it.
and there, bits of it here and there, but he's really more his own creation than anything else. And kudos to Jared Leto, who before this I generally, to be honest, have not liked as an actor. This is the first movie I have ever seen with Jared Leto where he did not annoy me. I had absolutely no problem with the man's performance.
Probably because you didn't see Jared Leto, you saw the Joker.
It's true, I really did.
And one thing that
and no, it wasn't just the paint.
And well, so I guess we'll get into Joker a little bit now. One thing that I really, really did love about his portrayal of the Joker, he honored the history of the character through his performance.
Mm-hmm.
He gave you felt that he was acknowledging Cesar Romero with the laugh.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And you felt that he was honoring Jack Nicholson with the smooth, leering into, hey, how you doing, pal?
Yeah.
And the voice was just Ledger enough for him to acknowledge these. There is a legacy of brilliant actors that have taken on this character. Well, if you think about it, Jack Nicholson, Jared Leto, and Heath Ledger have all won Academy Awards. Mm-hmm. They've all played the Joker. What other cinematic character has got that as a trophy of greatness?
Yeah, it's hard to say, and we're going to come back to this in one of our last points. But yeah, in many ways, as oddball as it may be to think about, the Joker is one of our standards for excellence as far as acting in this world.
The Brits have Hamlet, we got the Joker.
There you go, baby, there you go. All right, I think that covers that point. Let's move on to the next one, shall we?
Alrighty.
All right, the second specific scene that we're going to talk about is essentially Harley Quinn's origin story. We see bits of her origin story now throughout the movie. Her meeting the Joker when she is the psychiatrist Harleen Quinzel. She doesn't have the Joker-like makeup yet. She has her own skin. She looks like a normal human being. And it's a very brief scene where with just a few lines of dialogue where when the squad is climbing up through a fortress towards the final battle with Enchantress, they pass some vats of acid.
Yeah.
And Harley.
It's a flashback sequence.
It's a flashback sequence. Harley looks into one of these vats, and then she recalls when she was made into Harley Quinn. We see her standing with the Joker on a balcony above these vats of acid, and she says. What exactly? He says, this would...
No, it's shot like a wedding.
Yeah, it is.
I think he asked her, would you die for me? And she says yes. And no, that's too easy, he tells her. Would you live for me?
Yeah. Which is chilling enough by itself, honestly. And she says, what, yes? And he says...
She says yes, and he has this, I can't repeat it because it says so damn fast, but it sounds cool, but it ends with, surrender becomes power.
Yeah.
Which is... When I was thinking back on the movie, like I didn't know what that meant, but Harley surrendering everything of herself to him, and she jumps into the acid, and the Joker, since he's a sociopath, doesn't care.
At first, he's going to leave her there to drown,
but he doesn't care. He's like, okay, well, that's that. He turns around, takes about 3 steps, and again, Leto nailed this character because the realization the Joker's face. Very comic book because you can see the panel of the eyes widening up, going, "Oh, I actually care about this one."
Oh no, I've got to save her now. I've got to do something semi-heroic for a second.
Turns around and he dives into the vat of acid, and their relationship is birthed. Like their clothes start melting, their skin gets bleached, and she wakes up, looks at him, he looks at her, and he does the Joker laugh.
Yeah,
and this is the birth of a new Joker.
And not all the critics, but I saw at least 2 different critics say that this scene, it was just a random gripe tossed off. This is a random scene. Why is Harley looking into a vat of acid? Why did she dive into a vat of acid? So you have missed, A, that this is where the character was born, and B, that they are homaging the very classic scene in the '89 film where Nicholson is birthed as the Joker. You remember that, right? You do remember the first Batman film ever made. You remember that it was a classic? Yes? Okay. Glad to hear it. You can understand the analogy then. You can see what they're doing. You could look at the art panels of the 2 films side by side. You could see the similarities if you wanted to. But you don't want to because you just hate this movie so much because it doesn't have the Marvel logo at the beginning. I understand. it just tears you up inside that a superhero movie could be good and it's not in the Marvel universe. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Her head's just going to explode and melt all over the floor.
Chew it back, dude. Chew it back. Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've established that scene was not random. Would you like to say anything else about it?
And if we haven't, then dude.
Dude, exactly. All right, and then since we're talking about Harley Quinn, that leads into our next point where I am going to rant a little bit more.
All right.
And this is a complaint that comes up in, if not every single movie, probably 99% of movies that feature a female character that has sex appeal, which is that the woman is being objectified. And in this case, as always, there are very, the word is typical feminist complaints that Harley is being objectified. Now, the point that I'm making here is not that the movie does or doesn't objectify Harley. I'm not going to get into that because that's something that everyone is going to have a different answer on. You either think that it does or you don't think that it does. And different men would have different opinions on that. Different women would have different opinions on that. It's not the point. My point is that people who cry objectification usually are not proposing solutions to the problem at hand. They're just saying sexuality makes me uncomfortable and I don't want to be confronted with it. Now, you see, last I checked, sexuality was deeply entwined with art. You can't have one without the other any more than you can have a human body that doesn't have a sexual chakra. That's your second chakra, if you didn't know. If you try to separate sexuality from art, it's like taking 2 loaves of bread, slapping peanut butter on both of them, and calling it PB&J. It isn't. You're missing an ingredient. To switch gears for a moment, if in X-Men Apocalypse, you don't want to see Mystique choked by the character Apocalypse and lifted off her feet because you feel that that's promoting violence towards women, then how do you want to see her throw down with Apocalypse? Because I don't think you're proposing that you take the female superhero out of the fight. That would have provoked just as much outrage, and in fact it did in Age of Ultron when Black Widow is Ultron's prisoner and she's out of the action for a little while before the climax of the fights. So if you don't want Harley Quinn to look the way she does in this movie, if you don't want her to be quote-unquote objectified, then what do you want her to look like? And tell us, how can she be a different Harley Quinn who is still authentically that character, who is that crazy and that in love with Joker? And if you don't have answers to these questions, then you might want to think about what you're contributing to the conversation at large, because outrage is not an answer if this entire presidential election cycle is not, and all the horrendous nonsense of it hasn't taught us that outrage is not an answer. I don't know what ever will. Now, is there a brand of sexuality that basically caters to teenage boys that we've been seeing for too long on screen? Sure, absolutely. So, design a different Harley for us. This is my challenge to anyone who's listening to this and thinks that Harley was unfairly or badly objectified in this movie, because Harley Quinn is a great litmus test. You would be hard-pressed to find another comic book character whose sexuality is so completely enmeshed with her psychology as Harley. So give us a different Harley, and by the way, there's no time warping here. You can't give us a 1960s Harley and call it PB&J. She has to stay in the 21st century. And all of this, by the way, isn't even touching on Margot Robbie's performance, which, guess what, is great. She kills it, and her major dynamic is not the romance with Joker, it's her friendship with Deadshot. I think that's all I have to say about that. We will get into the other gripe, which was on set between Leto and Viola Davis later. But that is all I have to say about the objectification of Harley Quinn. Do you want to add anything to that, Eric?
Well, in terms of what she's wearing, it's established early on in the film that Harley uses her sexuality to lure men in just like a siren. Mm-hmm. And for those that have opinions about her outfit, I know Margot Robbie came out and said that she felt the outfit was maybe a little bit too scampy for its own good. You do get a glimpse of her wearing the traditional Harley Quinn outfit from the animated series. It does not work cinematically. There's the Arkham video game where Harley Quinn is in there as well. The costume in this film borrows a lot from that render of Harley Quinn than it does from the animated series Harley Quinn. So you could cover her up. You could make her look more like a clown doll. Mm-hmm. But what's on screen, it's what works for the universe of these movies.
If you gave us the animated universe Harley Quinn, then you would feel that you were being talked down to as if you were a 6-year-old.
You get a glimpse of it, and I don't know if they did this as a response to the outfit or whatever. But yeah, it feels good to see her on screen looking like the Harley Quinn that we remember seeing when we were younger. Mm-hmm. And then you see it on screen, and within 10 seconds, you're like, whoa, this would have looked incredibly stupid.
You know what her what the visual, what the look of Harley Quinn made me think of actually is, I've forgotten the actress in Sid and Nancy, but in the Sex Pistols movie with Gary Oldman.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, back in the day, she kind of has that like vicious, ripped tights punk look.
Almost like
Looks
the
amazing.
skater women with I forget what it's called, but they run, they run with the skates and they hit each other with the elbows and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, roller derby.
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has kind of a roller derby look.
It's
Yeah.
like a roller derby, Halloween costume. It's got that type of roughness to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, objectified, no. I am more... I could be upset about her being objectified a little bit, or I could be glad that here we are, 3 movies into cinematic universe, and one of your leads is a female.
2 of your leads are a female.
3 of your
You can't
leads.
call Katana a lead, but you can call her and Amanda Waller leads.
Okay, so you've established 3 characters in the female characters in the cinematic universe. One is Margot Robbie, who's white. You have Katana, who is of Asian descent, and you have Amanda Waller, who's African American.
Wow. That's 3 different ethnicities right there. Imagine that. How many ethnicities are there in the Marvel universe?
There's white and not so white.
Yep.
Moving on.
Pretty much it. Okay. That was 15. 16, and this one was so stupid that I just pulled
You had to
quote
put it in
straight
there.
off and put it on the page. One review ended with saying of Jared Leto's Joker, with all of Leto's method, the finished product is so erratic that you could pull any schmo off the street and have them do the same job. I don't even know where to start with this. First of all, as someone who has actually dressed up as the Joker for three Halloweens in a row, I can
his
tell you
Facebook.
that A, it's kind of hard to get that look right. It's a lot of fine detail if you're just talking about the makeup, and we're not even talking about the performance yet. If you're saying that, because the line kind of skates away from saying that Leto is the problem. It's not saying that Leto is the problem. It's saying that the editing and the way the movie is put together is so slapdash and random that you might as well have had some homeless person play the Joker.
Anybody play the Joker.
Anybody play the Joker.
Let me reference another film. A few years ago, Brad Pitt did the movie Troy. He played Achilles.
Which I didn't see. I don't think.
It's not a
too many
bad
people saw
movie.
it.
It's serviceable. Like,
Yeah.
it's entertaining for what it is. But they spent a lot of time trying to humanize Achilles instead of making him the demigod that he is. If you take that film and just get rid of all the love story subplot where you're trying to have people relate to who ultimately is the villain of the film, then you have a powerful essence that's just hovering around, like you don't know when it's gonna attack, what it's gonna do. It makes it a much more intense character to have. Well, by the end of Troy, you're like, okay, well, Achilles is in love. He's just a regular person, and you don't want that when you see a demigod.
Yeah, there's that death of intrigue if you know too much. And is the Joker a demigod? Certainly. I mean, in our modern pantheon. We've had the Joker featured prominently in 2 Batman live-action films and in God knows how many animated films.
Yeah.
This is not the Joker's movie.
No, and even if
The Joker is a lurking background presence.
which is something that Nolan was smart enough to do in The Dark Knight, where there's no arc to the Joker at all. He is basically that element of chaos throughout the film. The Joker element of chaos throughout this film. You don't need much more than that to serve the movie that's on the screen. So, yeah.
He's the wild card among wild cards in this movie.
Leto said that there's enough material there for a Joker film. In the world that is the internet, I think
Sooner or later, you'll see it.
the Blu-ray for Anchorman has a second film within the Blu-ray because they shot so much material for that movie. They were able to edit their own other crappy film because
Great.
it's not as funny, but it exists. The movie that's on the screen, even the extended director's cut, they will most likely have because that's
No, Ayer has said that, David Ayer said there's not going to be.
there's not going to be one. Okay, there's probably going to be a lot of deleted scenes on the Blu-ray.
Yeah,
Either way,
that's
bottom line for what's on the screen, for the arc of the story, for what you want the audience to see, this Joker was used just fine. Would I've liked another scene with him in it? Sure. It was every time it was on screen, it was awesome, but it didn't take away from the experience of seeing the film.
It's not the Joker's story. The Joker is like that last bit of seasoning
Right.
in a really rich stew. Could you you don't need the seasoning, frankly. You could eat it without the seasoning and it would be good enough, but it adds that kind of irresistible
He's like
tang.
that crusty stuff on top of the tiramisu.
Yeah. Not exactly what I was going to say, but I'll take it.
Moving on.
Moving on, the next point follows from the last one pretty directly. And while I think I just said when we started with the last point that it was the stupidest thing ever, but it wasn't the stupidest thing ever, because this is the stupidest thing ever. This is something that at least 2 different critics actually said, and since 2 said it, I'm sure there are more out there who also said it. They said that the movie sucks, gentle listeners, because the Joker is in it. You see, after Heath Ledger, the Joker should never be allowed to appear on screen again. That's it. We are going to cast him in bronze and immortalize him and call him Heath Ledger back in 2008. We don't ever get to have another live-action performance of anyone playing the Joker on screen, and because we were given one, the movie therefore sucks.
Okay.
Does it even require refuting? What is there to say?
This is where
on the surface.
Yeah, it is a pathetic statement, because this is where movies are show business, not show art. And the reason someone would say something this incredibly backwards is because they don't own the rights to the character of the Joker, and there's no incentive for them to make themselves create more art with that same character. There have been many revisions on many characters throughout time. The Universal monsters. The Universal does not own those monsters. They own the designs of those monsters.
How many different versions of Dracula have we had since the 1930s?
Many versions of Dracula we've had, and we'll get many, many more. We'll get, how many versions of King Kong have we had?
Frankenstein.
The Wolfman. All these like public domain characters. Sherlock Holmes, for goodness sakes, has.
Yeah.
At this moment, there are 3 different versions of Sherlock Holmes.
Wait, what's the third one?
There's Robert Downey Jr. There's the Sherlock.
Robert Downey Jr.'s franchise is done. They're not going to make.
No, they're making a third.
Are they really?
Yeah, they're making a third. And then we have the Elementary that's on CBS.
Right, but if Holmes was not in the public domain, and if you hadn't had not just the original stories, but God knows how many films and television shows before the second decade of the 21st century to draw on, then you would never have had the beloved Benedict Cumberbatch series now, which not everyone loves. I love it. Most people love it. I don't know anyone who doesn't love it. If I met someone who didn't love it, I probably wouldn't want to have beer with them. But...
Well, let's put it like this. Let's use another franchise where it has an actor and a character that's iconic. Harry Potter.
Sure.
Those 8 films, good or bad, that's not the point. The point is that Daniel Radcliffe is Harry Potter. Right. He will always be Harry Potter.
Just as Alec Guinness will always be Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right.
Which he didn't care for after.
But the point is that it doesn't matter how we feel about it as the audience per se. It matters that there's going to be someone that's going to pitch an idea that says, we can do this entire franchise all over again from either a different perspective or a different flavor on these characters. You don't have to you can tell the same story in a different way with a different cast, different everything. Could you imagine the first Harry Potter film made today with today's technology?
Wow, that would
there's opportunity there to do something interesting with it.
Yeah, so Neil Gaiman a number of times has said that talking about myths and the power of myths, and he's someone who would know about them, has said that myths are compost. You use them, you put them together in a certain way. You build a story out of them, and then over time, that story melts. The myths go back to their basic ingredients. They become compost. They get mixed up and used again, and this goes on forever, and humanity goes on telling itself new amalgamations of the same stories. There are only so many plots out there. Albert Einstein once said, talking to a reporter said, "So, you had any new ideas lately?" And Einstein said, "Good sir, you only have 2 or 3 ideas in a lifetime." That's it. Everything that you do is just a variation or a slant on those 2 or 3 ideas.
It's a trickle-down effect of the idea and then life around those ideas. Yeah. So, getting a new Joker does not make you forget about Ledger's Joker.
No, Ledger's Joker will always be there. People will for probably the next 100 years be watching The Dark Knight, if not because Nolan made a great movie, then because... Ledger's performance in it is so unforgettable. You see it. He was brilliant, surpassingly brilliant.
And Ledger's Joker did not take away from Jack Nicholson's Joker, like how Jack Nicholson's Joker did not take away from Cesar Romero's Joker.
They're different characters.
That is a. I'll call it for what it is. That is a lame, stupid, petty fanboy that stands online for Comic-Con for 19 hours wearing a suit that's 2 sizes too small and is probably 10 years too past this time to be on that line. This is a very stupid thing to say.
I think that puts paid to that point.
All
All right,
right.
there are 2 points left. The first one is the only point of these that doesn't come directly from the critics, because this is things that I've heard from out there in the fan community and friends talking about, and this is to do with the method acting in the film, and it's not just Leto. Ayer apparently, and I haven't seen Ayer's other films as a director, but he is apparently a very method guy. Wants his actors to experience what the characters are going through, and so he had each member of the Suicide cast go through things, do things that the character would have done. He had Jai Courtney put out cigarette butts on his arms. He had the actress who plays Enchantress strip naked and walk into the woods on a full moon to get in touch with her character. For the guy who plays Killer Croc, he had that actor sit and listen to tapes of a famous Japanese man who was convicted of cannibalism in the 1980s. And Viola Davis didn't do anything physical. She mostly read biographies of political figures and such, people who were very Machiavellian throughout the ages.
I thought she forced to go into a pound and find the cutest puppy and they shoot in the face.
I wouldn't put it past her, but I think Viola Davis mostly just read books to prepare for Amanda Waller. Okay. Let's see who else. I don't know what Will Smith's method training entailed.
I mean, if anything, you probably read books on snipers or interviewed snipers, something like that. But bottom line is that, again, in terms of the script, we might be thin. In terms of the characters, what the actors put on screen with those characters. Perfectly serviceable, very entertaining.
It definitely helps. Before, I didn't know that all of the method background while I was watching it, and while I was watching it, I only had heard the stories about Leto because everyone had, but I was struck by how full and rich. I think Cara Delevingne. I'm butchering her name. I'm sorry, but the actress who plays June Moon / Enchantress.
Yeah.
In the moments when she's transitioning from June Moon into Enchantress, there's a couple of them that they give her, and there's just such a raw, terrified sensuality, terror and anticipation at the same time. It's very real, and in the moment, although I didn't know where it came from, I found it really, really moving, and all I could think was, this must be one of the greatest actresses in the world, or something, because she's really tapping into something.
Funny you mentioned that, because for the finale of the film, where she's building the machine to do whatever bad stuff's supposed to happen. One review in particular, two podcasts in particular, the IGN podcast and the Slash Film podcast, thought that she was god awful.
Interesting.
And that her performance is raspy worthy, and that's how bad she is.
Yeah. Oh, Golden Raspberries.
Golden Raspberries, yeah. Something where the end of the film reminded them more of Ghostbusters than a comic book movie. Because she's dancing and gyrating, and if you were to pay attention throughout the course of the first act of in particular, where you see Enchantress come out for the first time, there's this scared nature of how she moves her body. She's trapped in her body.
She's like a frightened house cat.
Right.
When she first comes out.
Yeah, or like some deer in front of headlights. So she's not moving her arms. She's not moving her hips or whatever. So when she's in her element, she can explore her power. Of course, she's gonna dive into it like some club kid high on ecstasy. It's like, give me more.
Definitely, yeah.
She's making love to her power. So that I found that to be just such a nitpicky, stupid thing to go into.
We know that the actress who plays Enchantress had no problems with the performance. She's as horrified by the reviews as everyone else. But I do want to get back to the main point about method, which was the only place in the film where we know of that we actually had a gripe between cast members. Throughout the making of Suicide Squad, the media focused and poured over all the reports of what Jared Leto was doing and how far into method he was going. He sent Margot Robbie a dead rat. He sent Will Smith some bullets. He sent the cast a dead pig, things like this. And in one of the more extreme examples, admittedly, of method prep that there is, he sent a number of cast members, including Viola Davis, used condoms. And
how far they were used, we do not know for sure.
We do not know. I haven't seen them, nor do I intend to. But he sent them. Now, I am not here. I have absolutely no interest in passing moral judgment on what Leto did. He's a grown man. He chose to prep the way that he did, and he chose to do what he did. And he chose to send them out, and Viola Davis, who is probably one of the best actresses in the world, and a grown woman, chose to take offense. Those are the choices that they made. Now, that being said, do I feel that what Leto did and Viola Davis's response to it, because after that happened, after she got the used condom, she refused to even step onto set with Leto unless they were filming. She wouldn't talk to him. She wouldn't look at him. She wouldn't be near him unless they were filming. Do I feel that what happened there added something to the dynamic between the Joker and Amanda Waller? Oh yeah, it absolutely, it really did. And I hadn't heard that story yet when I watched the movie. So all I knew was that there was something going on here with this kind of really pure hatred that Amanda Waller seemed to have for the Joker.
Just under the surface.
Just under the surface. And these are characters who, mind you, are not given any backstory together, and they don't have any scenes together. And yet she really seems to hate the Joker. And there's a moment about halfway through where she believes she's killed the Joker, and when she turns around to the rest of the squad and says the Joker is no more, there is such a almost pure, almost undying satisfaction in her voice that even though I knew it was impossible, for a moment I thought, wait a minute, did she really? She killed? Is the Joker dead?
Because you believe it. Because she believes it.
Because she wanted it to be true.
Yeah. Very Jared Leto going method and all the acting method. There's a certain level of credibility that you just buy when actors commit. Again, I'll reference another movie just to give it a better context. For the second and third Matrix film, Lawrence Fishburne and the guy that played Locke, I forget the guy's name, he's also in Man of Steel, Lennox something, I believe his name is. But before they did their scenes together, they actually explored the history of their characters. Were they always enemies? Were they always rivals? Were they friends? And they came to the conclusion that they were friends. And it was the fact that Jada had, who was Will Smith's wife, ironically, that Jada had picked one at one point, then moved to the other. That's what caused friction in that relationship. So they have this history of admiration, but because of the love triangle, they automatically despise each other. And they came up with that by themselves as actors. Nothing that was told to them by the Wachowski siblings at the time.
Yeah.
So when an actor commits to that, where he creates a history so that they believe every single thing that the character is doing, you don't need them to say a lot of things. It's all there. It's all in their face. It's all their posturing. It's part of the reason like this movie could be as short as it is with as many characters as it has, that you believe everything that's happening.
Yeah, and with Amanda Waller, played by Davis, there is not one line in the script about how she feels about Joker. She never mentions anything about him aside from, obviously that they need to keep Harley away from him. But after that happened, after Leto did what he did, Davis simply took that in, and being the highly proficient acting machine that she is, she simply, maybe even unconsciously, just integrated it into her performance.
Yeah,
and there it is.
Like we got the bastard.
Yeah, and it's frankly beautiful. So did she want that to happen? No. Can you take offense? Sure. Did it add something to the movie? Yes.
All right.
It did.
Final point.
Final point. The very final point. Drum roll, please. All right. The final point. I know I've said it twice already, but this is the stupidest thing that has ever been said. Suicide Squad, and this is a direct quote, Suicide Squad is a bad movie, said the critic, but beyond that, I don't think it's one that anyone will actually like.
Yeah.
Which has been refuted voluminously by the many legions of people, not critics, but people who have gone to see this movie and enjoyed it.
Yeah, let's put it like this. The Room is a bad film. Room is notorious for being one of the worst movies ever made because the director did not know how to use film stock. He did not know how to frame a shot. A third of the movie's out of focus. The acting is just appalling. The voiceover, the ADR doesn't sound natural in the slightest. I think there's a love scene where the guy's still wearing his pants, for crying out loud. But
Wow.
the bottom line is that is a appallingly bad film, and there's screenings of it all the time because people love how bad it is. If you were to tell me that you don't like Suicide Squad because maybe it's a little bit too violent for me, or maybe it's a little bit too intense for me,
Okay,
or
it's not your taste.
it's not your taste. There's nothing to say that this movie has to be in your taste. And I know this again. We don't want. I hate the fact that we're coming off as DC apologists because we're not. We generally like this film. I avoided seeing trailers because after Batman vs Superman spoiled basically 80% of its plot with
Yeah.
its trailers. I just don't see trailers anymore. I didn't see the trailer for Independence Day, and that movie was a flaming pile of crap. So go figure. And I was really looking forward to that one. But bottom line is that this is a fun movie, dude.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, and it's not unintentionally bad either.
It's not ironically bad. It's not so bad. It's good. It is a fun.
It's a fun movie.
It is a colorful, intense roller coaster
You could
ride.
have midnight screenings of it the same way you do of Rocky
Rocky
Horror.
Horror Picture Show.
Sure, absolutely. And Rocky Horror is not a bad movie. It's not unintentionally bad. It knows what it is, and it revels in it, just as Suicide Squad does.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. This movie knows what it is. It's a movie about rogues. It's a movie about, in many ways, expanding the DC cinematic universe. And if you think about it, like let's from just a studio standpoint, let's be Suits for a moment. You've had the standalone Superman film, so you got the heroes covered with the heroes beginnings with that. You got Dawn of Justice. Now you introduced the reality of the villains with this film. The next movie after this is Wonder Woman. That's the only movie, with the exception of Man of Steel, that just has one superhero character in it.
Right.
And it's a prequel.
Right.
So you're giving your characters a history.
Yeah. They were just telling the story in a different order than Marvel chose to do. Marvel told its stories for all of its heroes in a very linear manner. Origin story, sequel, birth of the Avengers, continuation of the Avengers. DC is doing it a different way.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You can say they're Tarantinoing it. They're giving it to it a different sequence, but at the end of the day, this is a fun movie to see. When I went to see it, I saw it on the AMC Prime, and the surround sound was freaking intense. The helicopter sequence when the Joker comes out and he's firing a minigun is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many cool things about it. There's just so much to like about this movie at the end of the day. And that's what I hope, in a year's time, people will look back at it and see. There's just a tremendous... This movie is flat out fun. The color is fun. The cinematics are fun. All the kitschy little title displays are fun. The acting's tremendous fun because, hey, everyone's 150% committed to their roles.
Yeah.
The plot is fun. Because we're not using cuss words on the podcast, I can't quote exactly what El Diablo says when he goes in to fight Enchantress's brother at the end. But when he says it's on, and then it's on, B-word. It's just like, you can't have Batman say that. You can't have Wonder Woman say that, but you can have this dude say that, and it's awesome.
And I also think that, right now, because we're coming off such a divisive film in Batman vs. Superman, it's very easy to kick DC while they're down.
Yeah, it is.
What Marvel had going for it with the beginning of its cinematic universe is that it had a brilliant performance and a brilliant film, and that movie was Iron Man. I've always made the argument that I thought Robert Downey should have been considered for an Academy Award for what he did with Tony Stark, because that is an amazing performance.
Maybe a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Right, but
he's the spine of the MCU in many ways.
Yeah, he is. He makes that universe work because when in doubt, you go to Robert Downey. How many movies has he done for them?
I don't have any idea.
Yeah, even the Avengers films,
8
right? As many as Hugh Jackman has done for 20th Century with Wolverine, if not more. The bottom line is that they have their star.
I mean, everyone is. I mean, Chris Evans as well is. We just said that the word iconic is overused, but he is. There was an article a few months ago saying that Chris Evans has essentially replaced Chris Reeves' Superman as the most iconic superhero ever, and he really has, to the point where if you look at authentic Captain America paraphernalia from the 1940s, it looks wrong because the guy doesn't look like Chris Evans.
Yeah,
superhero movies have escapism built into them. You go to these movies to see people do things that you can't do but that you wish you could do. If only I could do that, how cool would that be? If only I could fly, shoot laser beams from my eyes, do ninja like Black Widow does, or jump around like the Hulk, or throw Cap's shield. Or with these guys as well. You don't get as much of them, but how cool would it be to be a Deadshot like Deadshot? How cool would it be to be as crazy as Harley Quinn? If that kind of escapism isn't your cup of tea, then fine. But it's other people's cup of tea. So let them have their cup of tea. Yeah. Okay?
So I guess that covers it. Oh, we didn't give it our scores.
It's watching it, watching it all the way through in the theater, I felt like I couldn't give it less than an 8, honestly. Yeah, it has flaws, but the flaws at the end of the day are really so minor to the the gut level impact of the film.
Right.
I feel like I've got to give it an 8.
Yeah, I feel very much the same way. This is one of those, and if you guys have like heard my earlier stuff, I'm a little bit tougher than he is. But yeah, this sitting down and it. Michael Medved years ago reviewed the Get Shorty, the John Travolta film, and he felt it was a perfect 3-star film where he was having a really, really good time. The movie wasn't amazing, but he was having fun watching it, and Suicide Squad gave me that feeling. No, it's not amazing, but I'm having fun here. I'm enjoying what I'm seeing. I'm appreciating what I'm seeing. So it is as solid of an 8 as I can possibly give a film.
Mm-hmm. And there we are. So next time we're either going to do Star Trek Beyond or the Purge trilogy. I'm ending with Purge Election Year, which was just in theaters about a month ago.
All right, so Ev, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah.
We have email. It's 365reelspodcast@gmail.com. 365, the numbers, not the letters, not spelled out. So 365reels@gmail.com. All right, I'm Eric Ortiz, filmmaker, New York City. My cohort is
Everett Goldner. Pleasure. Bye, guys.